Let's open the meeting. Pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First item on the agenda is public comment. If we have someone that needs to come forward and say something.
No. Oh,
What?
No.
Oh, the auxiliary, okay.
You have public.
Yeah, okay. Can you give your name so that we can put it on record here? Sure.
My name is Becky McCray. I live at 102 Pioneer Place, which may be some number that you would all recognize. I live next door to the house that the hospital recently purchased. And the reason I'm here tonight is to find out what your intentions are for using that house. And a lot of questions I have about the safety of that building in that circle. Can you give me a rundown of why it was purchased and what your intentions are?
Basically, it was purchased so that we could use it as a recruiting tool to get doctors and trained professionals in. We have difficulty in attracting good personnel in that area. And this is one of the recruiting tools for professionals coming in. Does that help you a little bit?
A professional as in a family or several different people coming and going?
We're hopeful that it will attract one family, but it may be that there'll be one or two professionals coming and going at some times. But the intent is to make it a permanent placement.
Okay, so you're not going to be looking at a lot of strange traffic, strange cars?
Oh, no, no.
We have 15 children who use that circle as your second playground.
Mm-hmm.
My fear, and I've seen it happen, the teachers on the playground aren't always watching the children on the playground. They're having a little chat about that mask going fit. In the meantime, the car pulls up, woman gets out, leaves the car running. She runs to the playground, grabs the child off the playground, throws him in the car, and takes off. I've seen it happen, and that's why I worry about a lot of strangers being in that area. So it turned out that was mother who was busy.
Charlie, is there anybody's name in there right now?
Not at this moment. We do have a physician that very well may be there. But again, it's our goal to try and find a place. It's a lovely house. It's very close to the hospital. And it's very difficult to find places for doctors to, or in a lot of our professionals that come to, for them to find a place to stay.
Right, I've seen some of the places that the stadium, my son-in-law owns one of those places. As I said, I have no problem except with a lot of traffic and a lot of strangers. The street isn't even marked with a stop sign. So the people coming and going, well, it's a village street, well, then it should have a stop sign. But there are gonna be people coming and going. What else I have here? So the plan is for a physician, not for training purposes and a lot of other people coming and going.
Our goal is to use this as Don said, is a recruitment tool to entice doctors to come to our community. That's our purpose.
And that's what we're gonna follow through on, right?
That's absolutely. We don't have a Walmart or Costco around here, so we need to have
So
something.
you need to have
help.
something that enjoys the outside. How did I end up there? Anyway, it was 10 grandchildren. I think that's what did it.
That's a good reason, isn't it?
Well, we've had several physicians who we were looking at, becoming a Lakeview, but one of the things that they're finding is there's no houses available that they, could find to rent until they established it.
And that would be one of the purposes, is to have them rent until they could find something to purchase.
Could be, yeah, one of the options.
One option may be that they wanna buy it.
The other thing I probably should bring up, and Mr. Stewart and I will probably go around the block on this one, the creek floods. And it floods, so it's flooded that house, it's flooded my house. And not just once, but more than that. Marcia Nichols and I were thigh deep in water between our two houses the last time it flooded. Luckily, it went to their house instead of mine this time.
But hopefully it doesn't go to our house.
Well, I
We'll
just-
just move it along to Mr. Stewart's house.
And I moved on to Goose Lake, Becky.
He
Yep,
sits up
we're
high on
involved.
his, he said, high on your hill over there. My son convinced me that there would be no more grandchildren after he walked in that waist deep water in my basement. It was bad. Let me just check quick through here. If things are going to change, will we in the neighborhood be notified?
What do you mean by
Possibly.
change?
If there's a different,
Different usage of the building, you mean?
I'm sorry,
You mean different uses of that building?
yeah,
It's zoned residential, I
it
don't
is
see-
some
I
residential,
don't see us changing anything there.
and the town doesn't either.
If we needed to change that, it would have to go through a big public process, and I'm not willing to attempt that.
We have no interest in it whatsoever.
No, I was just, my concern was all the extra people that would be there, especially with all the kids.
It's a legitimate concern. You're-
You may get a couple moving in there that does have kids, and they'll share your concerns.
What are a few more kids? We even have a little spillover from the playground, but when I look closely, you can see that they're mine and somebody else's. I guess that's all I have, since I didn't bring my glasses, I can't read what I wrote. The other night, this is the other question I have. Porch light was on, there were lights on in the house, but there were no cars. How do I take that?
Probably one of our staff, or maybe me, had gone into the building and inadvertently left the light on. And, thank you for letting us know, we'll turn them off.
When, I thought about calling the police and I thought, what am I gonna tell them, the light's on? And then because there was no car there, it was my other thought, and I thought, well, look how close it is to walk. It's almost crazy, but
But it's not a bad idea for them not to know that it's vacant at any one time, so the light's on, off, maybe a good thing.
there was a different
Protection.
pattern, yeah, but it's usually dark. That's why I was alerted the night that the lights were on.
I think you can be assured that we're gonna leave that as residential, we're gonna try to put in as professional people as we can, and we're not gonna have a bunch of strangers driving in and out,
That's the thing that concerns me the most.
so.
Especially with the stop sign and with all these kids, they don't think, they don't know. The ball goes out the street, they're going after it. When they come and pile up the snow in the middle of the road, they slide down it. And winter, those are my concerns. I have discussed it with one of the neighbors. And she has 5 children, so she's a little concerned.
You can relay our,
I
what we're going
most
to.
certainly will.
Thank you, Becky.
Okay,
Thank you,
thanks.
Becky. Thank you.
Okay, so our next item is, well, I think Janine Sims has a little presentation for us.
Hi, I'm Janine Sims. I'm the president of the Hospital Auxiliary. And I just wanted to come and give you a little report on what the hospital's wish list was for this year. And we received 5 requests from different departments. One of which, we filled all these requests except for one, and the reason we didn't fill the one is because they withdrew their request because they found the items elsewhere. But this year, we donated, or we are going to pay for $810 for new chairs for the cafeteria. And we are donating $1,500 for an iPad for the skilled nursing cottages to communicate with patients, especially those that have issues when we have COVID surges. We also donated $1,719.45 for a stand-aid lift for acute care. Thank you. You're very welcome. And then finally, we donated $3,150.96 for the Stryker chairlift for EMS. So those are our, thank you, those are our donations for the year. And even though we've had a pretty quiet year with COVID, I want you to know the auxiliary is still working hard to help all of our hospital needs. So does anyone have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we
very much.
appreciate it. You're very welcome, thank you.
Okay. That's wonderful. Okay, moving on, approval of the consent agenda. Has everybody on the board had a chance to take a look at the, I didn't get the calendar printed out. We'll pass that around.
I so move to approve the consent agenda. Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Allison Sampson, KCC.
Hold on. We're connecting her by phone,
Oh, you are?
because the microphone's not working.
Climate community. Oh,
Okay. We're trying to get your voice up. Hang tough in there, Allison.
4, 3, 9, 7, 2, 3, and 9, 6. Please re-enter your meeting ID.
Okay, the numbers on the 10 p.m. the phone are standards in case no one else has ever experienced that frustration.
No.
I know Dawn knows what I'm talking about.
Enter your participant ID followed by pound. You are in the meeting now.
All right.
Meeting. This meeting is being recorded.
Can we, there we are.
Allison, can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
Are
click
you
on
on?
mute.
Unmute.
Well, you should be able to hear us on there. She's calling on the phone.
Can you hear us?
Okay.
Okay.
If you talk, we should be able to hear you.
Speak.
Sorry.
Okay.
It's your phone.
All right.
I just got these coffee checks.
Okay.
Try.
Good. Can you hear us okay now? Okay.
Okay, can you talk to us so we can hear you?
Good evening.
Okay. The phone was turned down.
Okay. Allison, you're on with the KCC report for us.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be with you this evening, and I appreciate you inviting me to give you a little update. And before I get started, I want you to know how deeply I appreciate the support from Lake Health District and being staff and Teresa, Carly, everybody that I've worked with really makes it pretty easy to help to serve your health district. So thank you very much for that. Our program wouldn't be in existence without the support. So for those who may not know, KCC had a RN program approved by the Board of Nursing in 2016. At that time, they came and did a survey to see how well we met the standards. They approved us, our program, for an existing 5 years. They did find 16 recommendations at that time that they wanted us to work on back in 2016. And so I started with KCC in July of 2019. So I really just been at KCC doing this work for about 18 months. I'm happy to tell you that this March we hosted the Oregon State Board of Nursing to come back and do a very thorough, comprehensive review of our program, and they found no recommendations, and so they found that we had corrected all of the recommendation areas that they asked us to 5 years ago. They did approve us for the maximum time frame of 10 years, and we got several commendations, one of which I'm happy to share with you for our clinical partners. And that very much meant Lake District Hospital. And so thank you for that and for helping to help us achieve some of those commendations and certainly helping us address those 16 recommendations that they wanted us to address back in 2016. So we have a clean slate with the Board of Nursing and don't anticipate them to come back for another 10 years unless we request them to. And you might be wondering why we might want to request them to come back. And so one of the things that we've been working on very diligently in the last 18 months was a substantive curriculum review. So our curriculum currently is 7 terms. Most nursing programs are 6 terms. And so we did get board approval for a substantive curriculum revision to 6 terms. That will save our students several $1,000s for their tuition, as well as save the institution money as well. The other 2 things we've done for financial reasons were to change our 12-month contracts for our nursing faculty to 9-month contracts. And we're more easily able to do that with a 6-term curriculum. So part of our 6-term curriculum was to program in LPN competencies into our first year of our RN program. And so one of the reasons the board might come back sooner than that 10 years is we are going to start petitioning for and engage in the process of requesting approval of an LPN program. Again, I'm getting a little bit of a echo, and so if I stutter a little bit, it's because I'm hearing myself twice. So sorry about that. And so we are hoping to begin to ask the Board of Nursing to authorize us to offer an LPN program beginning fall term of 2022. So just in 1 year, we're hoping that we can recruit an additional 8 LPN students to start this fall. And once we've been able to achieve that, we'll look at expanding the number of RN students that we're able to manage as well. One of the things that is unique about Lake County and Cnas County is there are still a great need and utilization of licensed practical nurses in addition to RNs. So where in most parts of Oregon, there's no longer desire to employ LPNs, we still have that desire. We'd like to meet that community need by starting an LPN program. Next up on our 5-year plan is that we will also seek voluntary national accreditation. And also, for those of you who may not be aware, about a year and a half ago, the Oregon legislature changed statutes to allow community colleges to offer applied baccalaureate degrees. And the first degree that KCC wants to bring forward is a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. There's a little bit of a hiccup in that the legislature approved for an applied baccalaureate degree, and we don't want our students to have an applied baccalaureate degree, as that's a terminal degree and would really hold them back in exploring getting a master's degree or maybe even a doctorate in nursing and fully utilizing that scope. So we are working with the Higher Education Coordinating Commission currently for them to revise what they'll allow us to do. And as soon as we get that, then we will be working on curriculum, hiring another staff member, and then offering an RN to BSN program. So it won't affect our current programming and our current RN degree, but it would give our students an opportunity once they completed their RN degree, took their national licensure exam, got licensed to be a registered nurse, continue on with us in an online fashion to get that baccalaureate degree in nursing. So that's sort of the last year and a half and probably the next 3.5 years what our goals are in the nursing program. And we are on track with where we anticipated to be at this particular time. And so we do think that we'll be able to meet that 5-year timeline and reach all of those goals. The last thing I'd like to share with you is that we were able to work in collaboration with Lake District hospital staff to bring our Certified Nursing Assistant 1 program to Lake County, to Lake District Hospital in winter term. Unfortunately, recruitment was less than desired. We didn't get as many students as we wanted. We did allow for up to 10 students in that class, and I think we are 2 completers at that time. But we've also committed to redoing that program. We're doing it again in the summer term, and we've been working with your HR department to give them the schedule so that they can begin recruitment early and really maximize those course offerings and hope to get 10 students in. And then last, Teresa and I have been in conversations about also offering our CNA 2, which allows our CNAs a wider scope of practice. They can actually do more in the hospital setting, lighten the load of the RN. And we are planning to offer that at Lake District in the fall term. So of course we use a combination of modalities, whether that be online, remote, synchronous, and also in person. For nurses and nursing curriculum, obviously, we can't do everything remote, and so we did have an employee travel to Lakeview, spend at least a week there, and then she came once a week as well. We were very blessed to have the assistance of an LPN employed by Lake District Hospital that also backed up our instructor and helped students build up, and in the clinical, which allowed us to offer this to Lake District at a reduced cost because we weren't doing 100% of the instruction. So there's your KCC nursing update and where we are currently, where we hope to go. And again, for me, it's really a pleasure to help serve your health district. Prior to my academic career, I worked for a nonprofit health district in Astoria, Oregon, classic health district. And then when I went into academics, and I was elected to their board of directors. And so, standalone health districts have a real place in my heart. And I understand the challenges faced by rural health districts in the state of Oregon. So I really am committed to doing this to help you out. So I am open to any questions, whether that's about my personal background or questions about what I just stated, or anything you'd like to share with me and keep in mind as we continue on.
Gerald.
Allison, a question in regards to your current enrollment. How many do you have? How many will you be licensed to do come fall for your RN program?
So we currently we take in a cohort of 8 students only. I'd like to increase that. You can imagine we don't have economy of scale, and so we're not sustainable on our own without outside, that being college as well as the funding we get from some of our partners. So we take in 8 students, and we will have 8 students graduate in August of this year, go on to get their license and be employable as registered nurses by sometime in September.
But is this Lake and Klamath County or just people from Lake County?
That's whoever is in the cohort. Our second-year cohort, actually, we don't have any students from Lake County. We had no applicants from Lake County that year, so it wasn't that we didn't select a Lake County student, we just didn't have an applicant. In our first-year cohort, it's my understanding we had 1 applicant from Lake County, and she was selected into our program. So we do have 1 Lake County student in our first-year cohort who's, pleased to tell you, extremely strong candidate and doing an absolute fabulous job. She's conducting her clinicals in your hospital and getting great work experience so that when she graduates, she'll be good to go and very familiar with your environment. I actually have a second year student who is contemplating requesting to do her last class called her capstone. They spend 270 hours paired with an experienced nurse in a clinical setting. She's not from Cnas Falls, but she's in our program. She's not from Lake County either, but she is seriously contemplating wanting to spend her capstone with Lake County.
Allison, do you want to clarify, there's 8 students in each cohort, so there's a total of 16.
So I have a total of 16 students, 8 that will graduate this August, and 8 that will graduate in August 2022. So we are right now in the recruitment phase for our next cohort. I'm not sure at this point whether the deadline is April 15th, so I don't have all the applicants in. The first thing I do is kind of look where applicants come from, so that I have a concept of how many are applying from Lake County, how many from Columbus County. Our contract or agreement or MOU with Lake County is, that everybody goes through the same process. And so I do know that there is some misunderstanding that we hold 4 spots for Lake County and only give 4 spots to Columbus County, and that is not how the agreement reads. And so we want to select the 8 students that have the best chance at making it through the program. It is probably the most rigorous program at a community college, and 8 students who will be assets to our profession. The other thing we're doing with our selection process is making sure that it's very holistic, meaning it's not just about academics. Sometimes some of our students that come from diverse backgrounds may not be achieving the same level academically. That doesn't mean that they're not good students. It means they spend a lot of time translating. And so we aren't just looking for the 8 top academic scholars. We look at a lot of different things. One of which we look at is where they took their prerequisite credits, and they get a lot of points for taking their prerequisite credits with us, which would also apply to Lake County students.
Question? Yes, Ken.
Just to refresh us a little bit, what is just a synopsis of your recruitment plan? How does that unfold in communities like Lake County?
I personally advise any students prior to applying. Last year, before the pandemic hit, I actually came out to Lake County and did some information sessions to try to drum up interest, as well as make sure that the Lake County students had a firm understanding of the selection process. So our selection process is in 2 stages. We have to make sure students meet the minimum requirements, which are the majority of prerequisites being completed, a GPA of their prerequisite courses of 3.0. It's not an extremely high GPA. Pre-nursing students tend to come in very academically prepared, and I'm not aware of any of them having difficulty meeting that stage. And then we look at various attributes such as their GPA, some courses that are voluntary for them to take that are not part of our prerequisites but help them in a baccalaureate program. If they've taken those classes, we give them extra points for that. We give points for military background. We give points for volunteerism. We give points for foreign language fluency. And then we also have them take what's called the Test of Essential Academic Skills, which was designed by a company named Assessment Technology Incorporated. And it was derived from a lot of research into what sort of academic skills the students need to be successful. And so depending on how they do on that, there are points available for that. So we add up all of those points, we move our top 20 candidates into phase 2. Phase 2 consists of essay, a proctored essay. We ask them questions about 5 different attributes that we are interested in, such as their knowledge and cultural competency, such as their background and evidence of their level of integrity, transferable skills, their motivational fitness, how do they motivate themselves, and then resilience, which we used to call tolerance to stress. But resilience just sounds a lot nicer. And so they write questions about those. We believe those attributes are what make us have the makings of a good nurse. And then the last little bit they do is the health sciences reasoning test that measures their critical thinking. So somebody may not be achieving academically, but have a high degree of critical thinking or ability to problem solve or make deductions on a set of information, and that's what that test aims for. So we add up those points to their phase 1 points and select our top 8 candidates for that.
Okay.
Very similar to the process utilized by OHSU and 11 other community colleges in Oregon. So my last job was from a program that was affiliated with OHSU, and so I'm pretty adept at what OHSU and their partners are doing, and have modeled our recruitment process very similar to theirs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, we thank you very much for making the presentation to us and traveling all this way.
It was a quick drive.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Hey, Christmas.
Okay, change stage set up here. I think, Charlie, you're up with the February financial report. An update on our financial condition. And I like our new logo.
Yes.
Is everyone okay with that?
Not that pretty.
Let's see if I can make this work. Oh, look at that.
Now you're not.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, everyone did get our financial report, both the details, sorry, I didn't include that. Sometimes I know what I'm sending, sometimes I don't do a very good job. Sorry about that. We, this is important to look at in terms of our volume, and you can see that in 2020 versus 2021, during COVID, it's been tough for us. On a call I was on yesterday, most of the hospitals are experiencing a 25% decline.
COVID began with March, was it?
March 23rd, yeah.
So this doesn't take into account the March, but you can see our volumes are quite a bit down. What is beginning to start to percolate is our volumes for our outpatient services. And that's the part where that's radiology, lab, rehabilitation, clinic services. Patients have a lot to come in to the hospital. So it's hard, we're struggling trying to predict what is it going to be like next year. Even as we're trying to prepare our budgets. And I cannot find anyone at any other hospital that has the ability to predict what they think it's going to be looking like. It's an amazing circumstance to be in.
You need a new crystal ball.
Yeah, the one I have doesn't seem to do a very good job. An example of the unknown, I think, is indicative of this uncertainty. We had a conversation with the radiology group out of Bend that provides services for us. And they said throughout they cover 8 hospitals as radiologists. In the last year, they were down 10,000 mammograms. 10,000 women did not get their mammograms from normal. So how do they plan on what will happen? Do you think all 10,000 will come in and need to get their annual preventative health service? If they do, how are they going to staff for that? It's an unknown. And so that's a very real example of how people have been uncertain about coming into the hospital. We certainly discouraged people a year ago from coming into the hospital.
Right.
And that was done across the state, across the United States. So when we think about that, how do we predict are we going to be right back to where we were? How's that going to go? Makes it a little tricky. I'm not doing very well with this. Where did I go? gross patient charges. We had a good month. As you can see, the month of February was one of our strongest months that we've had in quite some time.
I think that's an
I
all-time
think
high.
it's an all-time high. And if you ask Teresa and the nurses, were we really busy in February? The answer is absolutely. In March, we were so darn busy. We couldn't hire enough staff to help us. We had to divert patients to either Bend or Clan. I'm not sure everybody understood that idea of not accepting more patients, but
In acute care or in?
Yes.
so as we see this kind of volume, and March was equally a very busy month. It's hard to say. What is it going to look like? We can try to predict. It's a challenge. This does not have the month of February's collections. That number was unfortunately one of our lowest numbers of collections. That was 1.8 million.
It's down below.
Right here. So it's not up on the chart here, but it is here. So that was a hard time. And it is, of course, it's similar to what we had in August. We're working on that, and Susan's working really hard on this. We can go through more detail if you want to. I have more. Susan's been giving me a fair amount. And the good news is we're very close to making a selection on the chief financial officer. So that will help me a great deal. Unfortunately for us, I received Susan's resignation this past week and a half. She'll be joining Cheryl in their marvelous circumstance. We're happy for her for this opportunity. It'll be difficult for us, but we only can wish her the best.
When is your last day
22nd.
of this month?
Days cash on hand jumped up because we changed how we are treating the days, or the PPP loan fund. We have not gotten firm agreement that it will be treated no longer as a loan, but as a grant. But our auditors are quite confident that it will in fact meet all the criteria. It's just a matter of process.
So is that included in the 79?
It is. We also received notice, of course, remember, this is February. We received notice that we will, within the next 15 days, I think it was yesterday or the day before, we got the notice that we will receive our cost report cash. So our cost report was completed in November, and November 30th. And then Medicare accepted that, so we should receive the adjustment from 2019-20 because of our costs. That was a little over $2 million. And then when they adjusted our costs and our rate per day, rate for services from July 1 until current, that will amount to about $1.5 million. So that cash will come into the next 14 days.
Is that higher than normal?
It is higher. One of the unknowns that we have is that extra $1 million. Are we going to have to give that back because our costs may not be as extreme as they were when we had significantly fewer patients? Remember, the way our costs are determined is this is what our costs are, divided by the number of patients we delivered to. So during the COVID year, our volume was dramatically lower, and our costs didn't drop dramatically to accommodate that drop in volume.
Our cost per patient was quite high.
It was, yeah. It absolutely was. And so now we have to think strategically. If we're going to have to give that money back, then maybe we ought to be very prudent how we use that money. that's the process we'll go through once we have it and rely on some good advice. But it's always a positive to see a little bit closer. Did I go too fast? Okay. As you can see, is that all of you saw our net income, we did have a positive. It's not where we want to be, but it's in the right direction. Volume helps a lot.
Congratulations.
There used to be a saying that volume cures all ills in a hospital.
I thought it was doctors and nurses.
Thank you.
Well, I didn't say everyone said that. Yes, of course, the doctors and nurses take care of that, but it does help a lot. So we had a positive for the month, $238,000. We still have a negative for the year. And with the PPP money, that will help greatly adjust that. But that doesn't give us the ability to ignore our expenses and look at carefully. If you look at, while we had a nice big bump in revenue, and our net revenue was good, our wages didn't have a huge impact. We were down a little bit in our contract labor. Medical supplies, we were down. That's what costs were down. Okay. Our balance sheet, not a lot of changes. Some in the accounts receivable, restricted cash as we adjusted. Any questions?
Question, I guess for Susan, one of the things that we had a problem with a few months ago was, cleaning up the old system and getting things. Are we kind of done with the old system now? Or
We're not done, we do have a.
is there a light at the end of the tunnel?
There's a glimmer?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, no, I think we are getting closer, we have a much more definitive handle on what we know has to be written off versus things that we have been able to appeal, things that now we're getting a little closer to knowing some things have been overturned that we thought were gonna be write-offs, so Charlie has a report that shows all of that and the percentages and what those figures are looking like. Again, we call things collectible until they're not, so patients that are still making payments or things that may still be in process with insurance companies, obviously are in that bucket of things we hope to collect, but you don't know what the outcome is gonna be, how much of that will be contractual, those sort of things when the insurance companies answer that we are getting closer.
I could share some of that with you, but Susan gave that to me. I'm not quite versed in it just yet. We could go through it at a later time if you like. Okay, unless you really want to see it.
We didn't get March's collections up there, but March collections were very strong, so we'll see that next month. It was just short of $2.9 million.
Oh, excellent. My mistake. I normally get, or Cheryl used to get that. It was good.
I would like to have that after the February was a little rough, so.
Yeah.
March was strong.
Save the sweetener for later, right? So it'll help you get a
Chief Financial Officer.
Yes.
Yes.
CFO, absolutely.
Yes. And we have lots of good candidates. So.
See you go.
Yeah, thank you for your service here.
Absolutely.
Take the opportunity to say hi.
I hope they're paying you well to get out of this bird.
It's a good opportunity.
Okay, good.
Lakeview Gardens. Lakeview Gardens has struggled with the inability to admit patients because of COVID. You can see that in our volume being down. Now that everyone has been vaccinated and other places people are feeling more comfortable on coming, we're hopeful that this will change because we've just had our hands done. Our continuing problem is our contract labor. You heard Allison talk about our CNA class. We're hopeful that we'll get more candidates to enroll in the program. Teresa will talk a little bit about an incentive we have for CNAs. We hope that that will help get more people to fill that position. We do have positive that this is our medical supply company. And, pardon me?
2 months in a row.
Well, there's several things that have happened because of it, and I think it's worth noting. Most of our business has been in the sale of oxygen. And part of that issue is fitting the masks. And people, once they go through a sleep study, they get fitted with the mask. They've got to be able to use it. And we have been hampered with our sleep lab when one of our sleep technicians left us. People that work nights, it's I don't know any of you that would want to work nights all the time. It's a tough job, and so there is some turnover. We also had a respiratory therapist helping us fitting the masks. Recently, we just signed on with a new program that does facial recognition. Take your phone, takes a picture of your face, and it helps to find which mask fits. So there's a variety of different masks that work. Every face, some are narrow, some are wider, some are taller, all these things impact how well the mask works. If the mask doesn't work, people don't use it. If they don't use it, we don't sell oxygen. All those factors play into it. But positive is, we keep seeing, we're now hitting the kind of revenue that we think we should. We should be hitting close to $40,000 a month. We're not quite there, but it's also a
How are we progressing in move to the new location?
Good question. We were limited by a couple of factors. We had to replace the heating and air conditioning. The contractor got into problems with the supplier of materials, and so they were way backed up. They were all from Texas, and everyone knows Texas had trouble lately. They finally have it working. We're finishing up a couple things. We should be able to move in sooner than June, but it looks like for the medical supply will be in June. That's our plan. Good. Any other questions that I can address? Sure, you look like you had a question. Okay.
Okay, moving on, let's see, non-budgeted item.
So, as is always, we try very hard to plan exactly what we're going to need. It never works right. So, the latest issue is, you may recall about a year ago, we started conversations with a dermatologist, Dr. Oliver Wisco. And he's been coming now here for close to at least 9 months, isn't it? July. So not quite a year. And one of the procedures that a dermatologist often does is what's called a Mohs procedure. And that's typically on sensitive areas of the body, face, where you don't want to remove what might be a cancerous growth. It probably is, but you want to do it in very, very small amounts. So this Mohs procedure allows the doctor to take very, very small amounts until they have all that they need to do. In order to process the slides for the doctors to read it, we have to have a room set up for that. We have the space that was used by the cardiopulmonary for their supplies. That space has now been made set up for the processing of these slides. We're waiting for the state to give us permission. We've applied, but they move at the speed the state does. And one of the requirements that the dermatologist has is you want to process the slides or the tissue, put it on slides, look under the microscope, all in a very short space. our main microscope that was donated to us by our pathologist organization is inside the lab. So this would go inside this little Mohs tissue processing space. It's a little closet. So the $9,124 was not budgeted. We didn't know about that need. It is something that our pathologist has said, we've got a good selected microscope, it acts as a good backup. We're doing more procedures that require a pathologist to be present. So we think it's positive, and I recommend it.
I don't know that we need a motion on this, do we?
It's a non-budget item, so it's a capital item.
Okay.
We need you to approve. We will, by the way, not have spent the money that we budgeted for all the items. So, if we were to exceed what our budget was for capital items, supplement, but yeah, supplement, right, we have not. Okay.
So moved that we allow the purchase of the microscope for the amount of $9,124.16.
Okay, been moved and seconded to approve the non-budgeted item for the microscope. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. I love it. Okay. Dr. Foster.
Yes, sir. Okay, just one item from last month. Basically, we just did temporary privileges for the cardiologist to read the EKGs off-site. And that's temporary, that extends to May. And then that's while we wait for.
No, that's their full privilege. We did temporary through May, so you guys can vote on them at the. Yeah. So this is permanent, right, through May. There.
Okay.
So it's their full privileging for cardiologists. They basically do like our stat rad radiologists. We have an agreement, so they just read our EKGs and stuff from remote. And so that's what those privileges are. They're good for 2 years.
Dr. Foster, do you approve of the medical privileging of the?
I certainly do.
Okay.
It's nice to have that backup, so.
Okay.
And so that's good.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the medical privileging as recommended by Dr. Foster?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the medical privileging as proposed by Dr. Foster. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, Matt. Okay. Risk management update. Sean, you're up.
Good evening, everybody. For those of you that I haven't met, my name's Sean Cosby. Compliance and risk management here at Lake Health District is nothing new. However, I've only been in this job for about 4 months. I'd like to give you a brief overview of what the office is doing, current projects that we have going, a status update from our 2019 CMS survey for the hospital, and an update on incident reporting and how we're tracking it and what our status is in that particular aspect. Compliance in general is like emergency preparedness. It's an ongoing process. It changes all the time because regulations change all the time. We also have to look at whatever risks the hospital may be encountering because of those changes or new and adapting issues that may come up. My job is to work together with the staff, the medical staff, the administration, clinical and non-clinical staff to ensure that we are in compliance with those regulations, the laws, and our conditions of participation for CMS. Anytime we identify a potential risk, whether it be through some of the measures that I'll talk about a little later on, or from a recommendation from one of our staff members, we get together as a committee or as a group and trying to find where the issue lies and how we can best fix it and put us back into compliance. Current projects we are working on, myself and Ms. Farr from HR are currently working in conjunction to put together an actual compliance program for the district. As part of that, we are also establishing a compliance committee. That committee will meet for the first time Friday of next week. The committee's primary purpose is, at that first meeting is to adopt the charter. And if we have it completed by that point, review and accept the compliance program. Once the committee has accepted both those items, I will be bringing them back to the board for approval. We're trying to reinvigorate the patient engagement process. We would absolutely love for the public to give us any comments they have, whether it be a complaint, just a comment in general or a compliment. They can contact us through the district's Facebook page, or they can direct dial my number at 541-947-7298. They can make, they can email me any of those comments, concerns, or compliments. If they want to remain anonymous, they may utilize that phone number and call in whatever comment or complaint or grievance they may have. They do not have to give their name when they utilize that number. We've been establishing working relationships with several different departments and organizations across the state, as well as in Northern California. We are currently working on a project for a memorandum of understanding with MODOC and Surprise Valley Hospital for mutual aid and patient transfer agreement. We do understand that we're part of the Region 7 Health Coalition here in Oregon. However, geographically, MODOC and Surprise Valley are the closest facilities to us. And there's no telling what may happen in an emergency. We may be cut off to the north or the east or the west. The only direction we can go is south. We've made contact with several different compliance and risk management offices throughout the state, as well as working with special districts and the Rural Health Clinics Association. We tend to bounce ideas off each other. If one of us runs into a problem, we all try our best to come up with a solution for that. One, as a means of helping out the individuals that have that particular issue, and for those of us that don't, potentially heading it off in the future. Moving on to the Lake District Hospital Survey. This was conducted in June of 2019. However, they did not get our discrepancies back to us until July of 2020. They finally accepted our plan of correction in October. The CMS, Center for Medicare and Medicaid.
It's the state survey.
Thank you, John. They finally accepted our plan of correction in October of 2020. As of right now, one of those survey items is no longer a condition of participation under CMS. Matter of fact, it wasn't on the current CMS regulations when the survey came through. We're still a little perplexed as to why they added that particular item. However, all but two of the remaining items that needed to be corrected have been completed. One of those is currently pending approval by the Workplace Violence Committee, which has to do with our evacuation and shelter-in-place policy. And the last one has to do with our communications plan for our emergency preparedness policy, which should be completed by this time next week. It's just a matter of getting all the updated contact phone numbers for emergency services and our fellow hospitals, etc. Incident reporting, again, not a new topic here at Lake Health District. I went back and looked at the past 5 years worth of reporting. over the past 5 years, from 2016 to now, we have reduced incidents reported by almost 50%. We have experienced a significant decrease every year since 2016. And that's not to say that we're not reporting on events. Those incidents have been reduced through the utilization of our committees, through all of our staff working together to come up with solutions for these incidents when they do come up and try to avoid them in the future.
By incidents, I'm looking here, it says an incident is a disruptive or violent behavior, is that what you're talking about?
That's one of the possible incidents, yes, sir. There's several potential incidents that get reported within our reporting system at this time. Could be anything from patient behaviors to documentation issues to an injury by staff. Say they were walking from the parking lot to the hospital, slipped and fell on the ice. That's one of the incidents that would also be reported. We've taken several steps to reduce that number, and we are still moving in the right direction. We constantly monitor these incidents. As a matter of fact, I do a survey. I've done 2 surveys on the incident reports since I've been here, and give quarterly updates to the administrative staff and the department heads. And then I'll provide another annual report this time next year, just so we keep track of where our progress is and how we might improve. In general, I've covered what the compliance office is currently doing, the survey discrepancies and where we stand with those items, and the incident report. Do I have any questions?
Any questions from the board? Thank you. I'd like to
Then
report.
I do actually have a question for you. Are there any particular compliance or risk management topics you would like me to report on the next time I come to the board meeting?
And what might be helpful for me, I noticed there's 286, that seems like a lot going on, but I'm not really sure what an incident really is. If you, maybe at your next report, give us a little indication, like you talked about the slipping of the ice. Is there a particular department or area that is more of concern than the others, Sean? That type of, would be helpful for me.
And by adding a security officer, is that one of the reasons too, that incidents are potentially down here?
Yes, sir. A lot of times in security matters, perception has a lot to do with how people act. Myself, I come from a military background, and a lot of times people believe something is more secure, or they're going to have more problems themselves if they act up, if they can physically see some form of security presence around.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in. Pleased to meet you too.
Yes.
Good to meet all of you.
Okay. Teresa, you're up with the nursing report.
Okay. So just a few things Charlie mentioned, the CNA incentive that we put in place. So we took the idea from the nursing contract and applied it to CNAs in acute and long-term care. So when we identify a shift, either in acute or long-term care that meets our qualification for difficult to fill, and that could be just because we can't find the staff, or it could be that someone has called in sick at the last minute and we can't find anybody. So in either of those cases, the manager can, which would be the manager for long-term care, Rob, or myself or Tori, as my designee would say, the shift is difficult to fill, and then we offer a $10 an hour incentive for them to pick up those shifts. So that, we started that, I'd say, I don't have the date in my head, a week and a half ago. And it's really well received by the CNAs. and certainly has helped us a lot in our staffing. Obviously, the goal is to get them to work more than they normally do. So it's helping with some of the people that maybe only work occasionally or picking up more shifts.
But it's still a lot more cost effective than a travel nurse.
It is,
Yes.
yes. And it's helping, I mean, as you know, it's just until this week, we were really struggling because our unit was so full of patients. So we actually needed more than normal CNAs, and we didn't even have normal, we had less than normal. So it was a real struggle. We were actually sometimes using nurses to staff and work as CNAs, which is also expensive. So all of those things combined allowed us to discuss this and put this in place for a couple months and see how it works.
Boosted morale too.
Yeah, I think the CNAs felt appreciated and valued, and it's just been a really good, I think it's been a really good action on our part.
I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Teresa, what would be a normal work week for a CNA? I know they're kind of all over the board.
Well, it really varies between long-term care and acute. There's a big difference. Long-term care primarily works 8-hour shifts, whereas acute primarily works 12-hour shifts. So for me in acute, 3 12s is 36 hours, and that would be a normal work week for a full-time person. So if they pick up one more, then that really helps us. So in addition, for us in acute, we were able to find 2 travel CNAs. We have not been able to find agencies for several months.
Is it because of COVID?
It is. Yeah, they just were not available. I would ask for them and there would be no response at all. So that's helping our staffing and our patient care because it's a real struggle when we don't have a CNA. In addition to some other things going on, we have been, we lost our sleep lab technician a few months ago, and we have not been able to recruit a full-time person. We had someone hired and then he had a health problem and had to pull back out. So we did find a travel sleep tech with a lot of experience. She seems delightful. And so she'll work 3 nights a week to start helping us get caught up on sleep lab because we're once again several months behind in being able to do all the tests that we have ordered and need to give. And then lastly, I've been busy interviewing new staff, and we do have a really good candidate for a cardiopulmonary manager. So the staff will be interviewing him next week, and then we are also looking to fill the surgery manager position with an interim manager. So I'm a good candidate for that also. So that's just a little bit about what's been going on in the acute. Do you have any questions for me?
You mentioned that has the acute part of the hospital been quite busy?
Yes, February and March were extraordinarily busy.
Were we nearly full?
And we were nearly full, yes, for long periods of time. And everybody, the nursing staff worked a lot of overtime. The nurse managers worked day and night to try to help cover. So it was a really busy time. And we, I think we've mentioned before, we had what everyone's calling them the quarantine babies. We are having an extraordinary number of newborn babies, labor patients. So
Has this month eased off a little? Not the babies. But
we are yes, our census dropped off a little, but we are anticipating an uptick in May and a real big baby boom in June. So it's not over yet. Any other questions?
Well, February was a short month, 28 days, and it was a record-breaking month of gross Mohs Procedure, so.
It was a backbreaking month, I can tell you. Yes,
So we appreciate the work
Yes.
you're doing.
yes. My staff did a really, really fine job.
Please keep in mind, the staff do a great deal of work. So do our doctors. They were taking care of these patients too. And we appreciate all that our doctors have done.
This surge wasn't COVID related, though, really.
No, we've had COVID patients right along, but it wasn't the main reason for the surge. I mean, honestly, it was sort of unexplainable. It was just everything, all together. So, thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. That's an upbeat report, we need that. Charlie, CEO report.
Before I start, I'd like to ask if Carly, you want to bring up anything about any new clinic issues or things?
Gosh, I don't think so. I think clinic is rolling along pretty well. The work we did around setting up our clinic C, which is where our symptomatic patients who have symptoms of COVID and they, need to come into the building for some reason, that has really seemed to slow down a fair amount. We still have that stood up and we're still utilizing it, but at a very reduced point right now. So we've transitioned some staff. They're not there all the time. They're in the main clinic more, and then we communicate with them and they go back over to clinic C when needed. So that's kind of what we're planning through the spring and into summer and see what happens. And then, try to really plan for a more normal headed into fall, hopefully. Have been helping, a lot of my staff have helped with the vaccine clinics at the fairgrounds, which we've completed now. Judy did a fabulous job of making sure that all ran smoothly, and we had a really good process and should have been proud of how that went for Lake County. So that would be nice to have that part behind us and just go into maintenance, vaccine, and then otherwise surgery and specialists are here on their routine basis. And we're just seeing patients as they call and want to come in.
Have you been seeing a surge of volume?
No, I don't feel like we have yet in a huge way. Certainly the doctors' schedules are very full. They have plenty of follow-up from hospitalizations and routine care and things like that. The walk-in clinic has not been inordinately busy at all, which is interesting. I don't know what that's about. But it's often not very busy. But it's open and she can see as many as we want to see in a day. It's not that we're turning people away by any means. I don't feel like it's a huge uptick yet, except for the medical doctors. Their schedules are pretty darn full and busy.
Well, you touched on the COVID vaccination. Is there any indication of disparity between like a community right here, Lakeview and Paisley or Christmas Valley, New York? Is it pretty even?
Yeah, I mean, Judy just sent us some numbers today, and they did a high amount, over 450 or close to 500 vaccines in the Christmas Valley area. So I think it's pretty equal compared, for the population comparison. They did a good job of pushing those to the north end. Yeah.
Thank you.
Rebecca, anything you would like to bring up on HR?
We are preparing, we know surveyors are coming soon, especially for home health and hospice, and so we're preparing files and making sure everybody's HR file is compliant and ready to go. We just finally transitioned over from applicant stack to Cnas recruitment module, which means that now when somebody completes an application, it's through our Cnas system. And now we're working on training as to how a manager will access that application. It'll go, instead of coming to HR and then we vet it, it'll be automatically vetted and then sent right out to that hiring manager now. And that hiring manager will be able to accept or reject that candidate
send out an automated letter if they're rejecting that candidate. If they decide they want to interview that candidate, it automatically notifies us in HR and then we work with them to get that set up. So it also asks for any certifications that they have and they can go ahead and upload those right then. So there's quite a bit that goes into that and we're hoping to have that training completed, put together by end of next week and then roll it out to all the managers at that point. So that and I'm just trying like crazy to get staff in the building, so.
And before I start, Susan, do you want us to have any last words? It's your last meeting.
Well, I just thank you all for the opportunity. I've been able to learn a lot and really grow a lot during the 5 years that I've been with Lakeview District. So I'm thankful for that time here and for the community that we've been able to live in.
Appreciate you being here and thank you for this shift. Got you all trained up and then you go on. Our little girls where we are.
So, thank you. A couple things that I'd like to bring up that you might be interested in knowing about. We were asked by the town of Lakeview to support their application for funding for a water treatment process. And Michelle Perry sent us a nice note sort of itemizing what they would like to do. They want to improve the quality of the water and the color of the water. Their plan is to try and have a water system master plan with some design issues. Spend about $250,000 to $300,000, and they anticipate the total cost of the water treatment process to be about $10 million. So it's a big project, and they're asking for our support.
When I say support, you may.
Not money, letters.
A letter of support.
Is the hospital on city water?
It is. And so those that live in town, and if you turn on the water here, you flush the toilet, you see brown water on it. And just like at home, your clothes have a tendency to, there are days you don't want to use the water to wash your clothes. So I think it would be well worth our while to help support it. Certainly from a recruitment standpoint, it makes people concerned. The water is not bad for you, but it doesn't look good. So does anyone have any problem with this? Great.
It's not a health issue, but it's more of a psychological issue.
Correct. Right. So we will draft a letter to send out.
Okay, good.
When we talk about how COVID has been doing, one of the things that we're finding now is that not everybody is interested in getting a vaccination. Now this is next to impossible to read. So what I did was, this is a report that I just got today, or yesterday, that talks about, so it's a little bit dated information.
Is red good or bad?
Red is on the bad side. So what that says is, pardon me?
There we are.
So when you look at, this is the population, 70 to 74, 75, 80 plus, what percentage of the population has gotten a vaccine? And then those that are doing really well and those that aren't. Some of it's not accurate. Baker County, for example, is listed here. Well, that's a reporting error. And the chief epidemiologist for the state said, we know that's an error. It's not possible. So they're not quite as great as they are. Some of the counties that are doing really well have high populations of motivated people. And what they're finding is Eastern Oregon doesn't have quite as much of an incentive. The population doesn't want to get vaccinated. What we did yesterday, as Carly said, In North Lake, there was 450 people were vaccinated. Lakeview has vaccinated a total of 2,619 vaccines. Or, excuse me, 3,000, yeah, a total is 3,071 vaccines that were given. 264 were Johnson & Johnson. 2,807 were Moderna. About 1,400 people have gotten both shots. Okay? Those are good things for us. We're not quite at 50% of our, of the population that's over 65 that should get vaccinated. This also lists younger ages and whatnot. But if you have any suggestions on what we can do to motivate people to get vaccinated, that would be a great thing. The CCO, which we contract with, has some training and motivational information about how to encourage people to get vaccinated. And we'll make that available as quickly as we can.
So are we still doing like a weekly, public health?
Big vaccination?
Big vaccination?
No. In fact, what's happening across the state is, with the exception of the Portland metropolitan area, a lot of the communities are not doing the mass vaccinations anymore because people don't, all the people that want to get vaccinated have gotten vaccinated. Some counties are actually turning down additional vaccines that the state could give them because they haven't got enough people interested. So how do we motivate people to get vaccinated? That's a big challenge we're trying to figure out.
But I think it's important we let people know what we're doing. Paper or whatever. I didn't know we're not doing it in public.
It's out on Facebook. Judy's got it out there that now it's by phone call, and they've been pushing that regularly.
That just started though.
Yeah, we
right?
finished
Exactly.
yesterday with our last mass
The
vaccination.
last mass was yesterday.
So
But of the population 70 plus, how many people does Facebook?
a lot.
A lot, actually.
You know, we
I didn't
used
think
to,
about it in the
we
paper
used to
too,
think
but
that
yeah.
older people didn't pay attention to their smartphones. I hate to tell you, they're all carrying a smartphone. And they all know how to use FaceTime.
Yep.
Grandkids are the motivation to learn how to use FaceTime.
But what is the vehicle that going forward? So public health is going to be providing vaccination?
Yes. So in other communities, the pharmacy, a lot of the pharmacies are vaccinated.
So not doing a mass vaccination. Now an individual would just go to the Marius building.
Call, you have to
Call.
call,
Yeah,
so
the
that the
schedule.
day she draws out of that vial is the day you can come in, because once we open a vial, it has to be used that day.
So it's gonna be more like the flu vaccine that's been traditional for years. So,
The other question, do we know how long this vaccine is actually effective?
Recent things that I've read, maybe Dr. Foster.
At least 6 months on the Moderna so far.
6
At
months.
least.
So what that means practically is those people that got vaccinated in January and February are gonna be thinking about it in the summer. Not everybody's gonna wanna get vaccinated in the summer, so we can anticipate there'll be a push to vaccinate this fall. I would expect that,
so you're looking at annual vaccination.
unless they change the vaccines, if it only lasts 6 months,
Twice a year.
it's twice a year. I don't know, there's a lot, we're still very new in all this.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
But has the vaccine been is open to anyone that wants it now?
So the governor has said as of April 19, people over 16. Because a lot of the smaller communities like us have had adequate amounts of vaccines. We've had ample amount of Moderna. We've gotten a fair number of Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson had a production problem, and so that stopped the big flow. What makes Johnson & Johnson a very vaccine of interest is it's a one shot versus having a series of 2 shots. So how we None of the small communities have Pfizer. Pfizer, because that's where you have to store it at very, very cold temperatures.
But we do have Johnson.
We do have Johnson & Johnson. We do have, Moderna.
But I think it's important we do communicate the vaccine plan outside of just Facebook, because there's a lot of people who don't do Facebook.
So
Whether
a
it's
lot
the
of that,
county examiner or whatever.
so a lot of the vaccination information, we have to follow the Oregon Health Authority guidelines.
With the 19th, which is coming up shortly. So
It is, it is.
anybody-
And that's a recent change. That was not what the governor had in her mind earlier. But with the increased push to send vaccinations out to the states, it's been pushed harder and harder. The states are changing.
So Matt, is herd immunity somewhere around 75%?
Yeah, 70-ish.
70?
Ideally, it'd be nice to know who already has natural immunity and add that to the people who got the vaccine. And some people got both, and just somehow figure out that number, but we can't really know that number. The only number we can really go off on is what the percentage of vaccinations.
Would you add the people that have already contracted COVID?
Yeah, because those folks have natural
Yeah.
immunity. So it'd be nice to be able to get that true number. But
Do we know, well, first off, we talked about 6 months is good for the vaccine.
the latest study said
Yeah.
it's good through 6 months, so
So, but if a person has it and developed their own immunity, do we know how long that is?
we do not. We do not.
I think there's a lot of respect with the doctors in the county, and I think if the doctor wrote something in the county paper about herd immunity and about vaccines and that communicated out, I think would, because there's a lot of people I've talked to that are like, maybe, maybe not. They're not totally not going to, but they're not sure. I think that could push them over.
Yeah, but if
Wait for the.
they know that, hey, I'm gonna get my vaccine is one step closer to herd immunity, they might take one for the team, so to speak.
In addition to Facebook, do we have it on?
We do.
Radio channel?
We're trying to promote it as much as we can. But we also have to be sensitive that we must follow the Oregon Health Authority guidelines. So one of the ways that we have tried to promote still staying within the Oregon Health Authority guidelines is to ask everyone that is interested to call and get on a list. If we find an opportunity to give people that aren't within that age group, and once we've opened a vial, we gotta use it. So we call people.
But again, on Facebook, all we utilize the radio also.
We are. We're putting it in the paper, we're putting it in the radio, and we're putting it on social media to the best of our ability. And of course, the hard part of knowing about that is who reads, who listens, who watches, all those things. Sometimes if we put it at the Safeway, if we put it at the post office, at the light houses.
But we coordinated an article right around April 19th that says vaccine is available in Lake County to anybody that wants it. And a letter from our physicians talking about herd immunity and the different vaccines. I think that would be a great thing.
We'll work on that. Thank you. That's a very helpful suggestion.
Also, not just the Lake County Examiner, but the Desert Whisperer and what? The
Oh, yeah, Julie knows.
the paper up in Christmas Valley, Desert Whisperer. Because they don't read the Examiner and they don't get our radio station.
We do try to communicate with as many of the sources that we can think of. That we'll try to catch different people. Because you're right, lots of people use social media, a lot of people don't. Some people read the paper, some don't read, it's just like.
And mostly there, because we post office.
Okay, thank you. We have, I received some information from Troy Armstrong, our EMS director, that Chuck Messner received, and can't quite show you the picture, because I couldn't print it off. But Chuck Messner took possession of a new, what's called whole matro air-powered lift bag rescue system to be placed in the service in the ambulance in Adel. And what this does is it allows this airbag system to lift vehicles. It can get under small sizes up to 3 centimeters, slid underneath. Fast action, lightweight, put it underneath, lift. It's consistent, better than using some of they can lift up to 40 tons with this piece of equipment. So with the wonderful donations of people in the Warner Valley, we were able to get that for use in it's a wonderful thing to have. So it's really great there. Sorry to say though that Troy Armstrong is also going to be moving back to the Midwest where he's from. And he gave us his resignation for personal reasons. Good news is we've interviewed someone that would very well fit as a replacement. So things change, and I'm sorry to see people come and some people go, but that's part of our change process. I'm happy to say that we have an agreement with Dr. Jeffrey Chen, who's an intern. Dr. Chen will be coming to Lakeview on a 2-week on, 2-week off basis initially to see how this works. He practices currently lives in the Seattle area, but an associate of Dr. Chang, and is looking to work with us. So he'll be in clinic and admit patients. So we're looking forward to that. When I talked a little bit about the process for the Mohs surgery room, we have to apply to the state to get their permission to modify any rooms. We have applied and it's taken forever to get approval, but we have recently received approval to modify 4 rooms down this corridor, the west wing portion, the old long-term care area, to accommodate physical therapy and occupational therapy services, predominantly for adolescents and children. We're seeing lots and lots of kids recently. So we're modifying 4 rooms to accommodate needs, as well as 1 room, well, 3 rooms for the occupational and physical therapy, predominantly for kids. 1 room will be used and set up as a occupational therapy room for people that have suffered from stroke or from other debilitating conditions where they have to relearn activities of daily living. That means how do you turn on the stove? How do you run a dishwasher? How do you run a washing machine? Those kinds of things. So we'll be setting up rooms just to be able to operate that kind of influence. It's a very important part for people that have suffered, especially suffering stroke. So that's really the thing, and it's taken us an inordinately long time to get approval for it. But I'm saying we're moving forward. Give you a little update on some of our grants that we have worked on. Christy Albertson has done an incredible job of convincing the people that are organizations that we really are worth giving money to. By golly, they give it to us. One of the great things about that is it's one thing to get the money, but they keep giving it going forward if you actually do what you say you're going to do. A lot of times, granting organizations give money and then the people don't or the organizations don't do what they're supposed to. Makes it difficult. So a couple things we've gotten money on that are good. We got a grant from the Office of Rural Health, $10,000, so that we could have our EMS, emergency response simulation training. So our first responders are going to be working with the health district and practicing some public safety items. That's going on from March 22 to August 30. We got another grant for $5,000 to enable EMS staff to do some work in the emergency room, to help out when we have big events. We have a lot of people. They can't take on full caseloads because they might have to leave elsewhere, or the time is in between making a run. They have some time, but when they're on a run, they can't do it. So they'll be helping there. We received $57,000 from the CC through our, it's the local community, it's called the LCAC, Local Community Advisory Council, that throughout each county in eastern Oregon, we have these counties, each one, and the money that gets sent to us, and we invariably get more money than most of the other counties do, because we not only ask for it properly, we actually do most of the things we say. This one is to provide mental health clinician and evidence-based therapy, and especially PTSD. So we'll be training people and getting geared up throughout the county to handle that. We got $20,000 for 3 employees to become certified healthcare interpreters. And you think, really, do we need that? The answer is absolutely yes. Often we cannot, somebody comes in and if they can't speak, or we can't communicate properly, either it's a language or they may be deaf or mute. How do we communicate with them? So we're working on that. We have an overdose prevention grant, $33,000. So we have a lot of money that is coming into the organization. And it's really a credit to what not only Christy's doing, and she writes some really good applications, it's marvelous. But then the team that puts together to actually carry through. So one of the things that you had asked in the past is if we, whenever we write grants, that we get to where we can cover our costs for Christy to write those grants. And we include that now in all of our applications. So that was a question before we're doing it. That ends my comments. Do you have any questions?
Questions or comments? None? Executive session, so we'll adjourn, go into executive session under ORS 192-660, bracket 2A personnel, C medical staff, D real estate, and H legal. 10-minute break. Thanks, Matt.